Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Magpie Circle on Monday night. We're hoping, fingers crossed and everything else, that we will be playing at Oldham this coming Saturday. However, weather forecast for Oldham this evening, Monday night, -8. Which makes Nottingham at -6 almost seem fairly mild, doesn't it? So eyes and ears on any announcements ahead of the trip to Oldham. Of course, we're on the back of a postponed fixture as well. Disappointed, happy? Was it a strategic postponement, as they are sometimes called? Not quite as dramatic as Hull City and Watford when the crowd had been let in. What are your thoughts on games being postponed? Should they be called early like knots to avoid any problems for travelling supporters? We had a fair share of them going down to Dover and other places in the National League. Who would have thought that Manchester United would have tweeted that they've sacked their manager? Celtic have tweeted that they've sacked their manager. And yet, unfortunately, there are no tweets on transfers coming in from Notts County. Are you frustrated or not? We are, after all, only 3 to 4 days into the transfer window. The early intimations and the signs were that Notts would be moving quickly to bring players in, but no one in at the moment. Frustrated? Most important to get the right players in. What are your thoughts and views on that? And Accrington, yes, not great. And that's putting it mildly. Not a great festive period for the club. Where are you now in terms of the club's ambitions and your thoughts and views on where we're going to finish up at the end of the season? For me, has to be automatics this year. I wouldn't be that happy, I think, even with playoffs. But said it before, say it again. I think unless we have a good January transfer window, I'm not sure we're going to be capable of moving up to League One this season. All that and more on our show tonight, brought to you in association with JH Accountants, Trent Navigation, Big Shed and Over the Road. Evening all, Stel. Is it fairly cold where you are? It is here. I've got snow where I am at the minute. Got
Yeah.
snow.
Evening, everybody. Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously it's cold here. Yeah, it's one of these times I could do with having one of my holidays, but no, it is Baltic up here. We've not had any snow though, so we're all right. But it got down to about -4 was the lowest we saw on the car, and we had to scrape the car off a couple of mornings ago. So yeah, we've had the frost covers out.
I have to do a better job than ours did.
Well, absolutely. I hope they kept the receipt on them frost covers, because as I was saying to you just before we came on, me and Adam, when we're wrapping up the radio program after the game, we're there for like an hour after finish, and the ground staff were working hard, trying to unroll them on the pitch, getting them on straight away. But obviously they only work down to a certain temperature. So yes, not to be the game at the weekend, which is a shame, because I think Gillingham were on a poor run. We were. And we would have liked to get Accrington out of the forefront of our minds, I'm sure.
Yes, for me, nothing will convince me otherwise. I've been in and around football clubs for a long time. I've seen various playing the system, shall we say, to get games either on or off. I suspect that may well have been a strategic postponement, as we call it. Let's get a few thoughts from message boards before we dive into subject topics. Martin Blaney was on at 12 o'clock lunchtime today onto the message boards. Happy New Year, chaps. Hope we get some incoming players before the Oldham game, as fresh impetus is badly needed at the moment. Nick G, this will be one of many names, I'm sure, that will be bandied around. I did notice this one. Nick G says, I see Paul Mullin has been sent back or recalled to Wrexham from being on loan at Wigan. Would you take him? Although he has struggled with injuries a little bit. Richard Elvin, George Abbott is available. Yes, please. George's return from Wickham to Tottenham. Richard Terry, better get some players soon, otherwise Chesterfield will have purchased everyone available. And which superstar are we keeping under wraps? DC, says Richard Elvian. I think he means Dan Crowley. Colin Metcalf. Happy New Year from Colin. It's a now or never month, as far as I'm concerned. This window really is that important. Do we want to give ourselves the best chance to go up or not? My judgment is reserved, but my nerves are jangling. Some communication from the club would be very much appreciated. Greza Maxwell, the league is as weak, I'm talking about League Two here, I think, as it's been for some years. The club needs to dip its bread in the transfer window and go for it. If they don't, then it smacks of being content in Division 4. This is a fantastic opportunity to capitalise. And I also realise that 24 clubs are in the same boat, with the same pool of players being touted about and available. Rare Productions, yes, Accrington was dreadful, but we're not out of it yet. Indeed, we're not. Plenty of points to play for and still in the top 7. I'm not sure we are we? I think we're 8th now. Players to come back and a few new faces to arrive. I still believe minimum playoffs this season. Happy New Year from Bale and Ball. I'm getting in early because it's going to be a busy night on the chat sections with all the ins and outs at the lane. Well, we've been checking regularly, I'm sure, as we all have. Nothing on Twitter. I'm sure if anything does transpire during this show, there will be plenty pointing it out. John Parnham, Happy New Year. I'll be late onto the show, but hope to join you after 7:30. I hope we can hear something soon about possible new players. I know it's not a simple process to recruit, so I wish Richard Montague, Martin Patterson, and the staff all the best as they seek to strengthen the squad. Happy New Year from Jurgen Pye, trying to be patient, but really want someone in for the Oldham game. Gazali says, I'm feeling flat and deflated, similar to Wimbledon playoff, Harrogate Wembley, Grimsby playoff. We must grasp this nettle of opportunity and get an automatic slot. Biggest fan base in this division. We are being undersold. Happy New Year to all from Ian Hayward. Let's hope fans are not left in the dark regarding signings, transfers, like when we had to wait in the summer. Ian Hayward goes on, we need to not let the January window detract us from our objectives. I hope we get our players back. Due to this lull period, we need to rely on others dropping points. Jurgen Pye, we have 2 away games in a row. Can't rely on other teams. Yeah, Senga Schmidt rattling off a whole list of players from the 50s, who I think he's ironically saying we're just signing. Silence is deafening, says Richard Hawksworth from Royal Marlow. Evening all and a happy new year from Mark Williams Island Pie. Feeling a little glass half empty at the moment after the last few games. Knots look a little jaded currently. Richard Hawksworth, overall results good in December, and we would have taken it. Accrington, however, moves us back 2 steps and means we have failed to capitalise. Ian Cooksey, who was championing, I was going to mention this, the cause of Ricardo Rees from, was it Merthyr? He's been signed by me, pal Robbie Savage, at Forest Green, and scored twice on his debut, and also hit the post twice. Ian was obviously studying the game at length there. All right, that we'll dive into a few more later. Stell, not a great deal of optimism around to start 2026 with a nightmare against Accrington, postponement against Gillingham, and 3 or 4 days into the transfer window, we haven't got any signings. Other than that, it's been a good start to 2026.
Yeah, absolutely. And I forgot to say, Happy New Year, everybody. Yeah, we're that many days into the new year, it feels like a while ago. But I mean, yeah, look, it's not started how we wanted. Absolutely, that's for certain. But look, let's address the fact that there's people saying that they wish the club could tell them something or put some news out or just reassure everybody that they are in for players. unfortunately, that never is going to happen. It rarely did happen. It certainly doesn't happen nowadays, no matter what club you support, because the players that they're in for, until they're signed and sealed, by making it public, by letting it be known to our fans, obviously any fan can then get hold of it. And then it just drives up the interest, drives up the price, and you might end up losing a player that you're in for. So, unfortunately, that is why you're not going to hear anything until business is done, signed, sealed, and delivered, which hopefully won't be too long away. But we've got to wait until it's all done. You know how the game works these days with agents and players, and the domino effect of clubs waiting to fill slots before they let players go out. So it is frustrating, absolutely, and certainly, you would think the best bits of business are the ones that get done early, identifying targets and getting them done over the line. But, football isn't simple, and particularly with these transfer windows, it's difficult because, as we know, everybody is fishing in a very similar pond, looking for the same sort of players. And as we've seen, Chesterfield have brought in four faces since the turn of the year, but I imagine their budget is a damn sight bigger than Knott's, and if it wasn't already, it probably is now. So, yeah, look, it's just a frustration of things. Add that to the performance against Accrington, which was really, really, jaded. Jaded is probably doing them a favour. It was a really, really poor performance after a good performance at MK Dons. So, frustrating way to start the new year, but there's still a fair bit of the course left to go. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully they can get a couple of faces in. Like I was saying to you, and I've said before, I think they're probably lining up two, three, maybe four even to go out as well. And I'm not necessarily talking Dennis Jatta in terms of sales. I'm talking about just freeing up budget in terms of salary with players going the other way. We know Sonny Al Joffrey's gone back to Man United. And I imagine they're possibly looking at two or three others who aren't getting a look in under Martin Patton, seeing if they can get them out the door to free up funds to bring other players in.
How important is it that we do bring new blood in? I mean, look, I've got on the record for a while of saying I don't think this group of players, as it stands, taking into account some of them are bound to get injured between now and the end of the season. You're not going to have every player that Martin Patterson wants to play always available. I personally have said for a while, I don't think this group will get us up. Where are you on this debate?
Yeah, I think it's important you bring new players in just to freshen things up. As somebody mentioned, we looked a bit jaded. Drawn three blanks out the last four games. That's we've only had four blanks, as in not scored in four games this season, and three of the last four we haven't scored. One goal, that Tom Iopenda goal at MK Dons, is the only goal out of the last four. So I just think we need freshening up a little bit. And again, I say, I don't just mean that is stockpiling players, because if we go and bring two or three, I've got the squad at 26 at the minute, and that's not including any young lads or anything like that. I've got 26 in the not squad at the moment. Yes, I know there's a couple of injuries. Let's not forget we're without Matt Palmer and Scott Robertson in the middle of the park, as we have been for the last few games. But it's a big enough squad. It's a big enough squad, but I think you need to refresh it. I think we need some quality at the top end of the pitch. I've said this pretty much all season, be it creativity, be it another goal scorer to put a bit of pressure on Jatta and Dennis, or to take a bit of pressure off them maybe when they've gone a few games without goals. But yeah, I think we definitely need a bit of quality. I look at our squad and I think we're very samey all over the pitch. And now you could look at that as a positive in terms of if someone gets injured, you've got somebody who's probably as good or certainly not too different to come in. But I also look at it and going, have we got any real star quality, some individual sort of real star quality, particularly at the top end of the pitch? And again, this is maybe credit to Martin with this. The likes of Jody Jones hasn't really performed this season, as we know he can. Been carrying a knock, a niggly knock for a lot of it. But I just don't think we've really got that quality in them the attacking third to really open teams up. We've got some steel, we've got grit. I've said about that all season, and even in the poor performance, it's not down to a lack of effort, but I do think at times we have a lack of quality with that final ball, and with being ruthless, sort of in the penalty area outside of Dennis and Jatta.
Okay. Evening all from David Dawes. Couple of weeks ago, looking good. Might have gone top. Now we're out of the top 7. No signing yet. Not looking good. Charlie Capewell, all gone very quiet. Has anyone got any transfer news? Evening from Stephen Newton and from Kay. Nigel Natras. So, a fortnight ago, Richard Montague tells us that signings are lining up. Then we reach New Year's Day and nothing happens. Meanwhile, our rivals are all signing players. Adam Kent, with the forecast this week, there has to be a real probability of a postponed fixture against Oldham. Hopefully, we will know early. Well done, Notts, for the early decision for the Gillingham match. Norfolk Pie, a familiar pattern. Once again, we get into a great position and then it all goes pear shaped. Stell always says League Two is very inconsistent. Surely that is an opportunity, and consistency has to be a priority. Ian Cooksey, I sometimes wonder if the club are taking the goodwill of the fans for granted. I hope they are aware it won't last forever. Excellent point, says Ian, as having been the victims of late postponements many times, it was good to see common sense at last. Greza Maxwell, it seems a lot of the Premier League clubs are recalling all their loanees. Yeah, and they'll probably then look to re-loan them somewhere else, Greza, as maybe a slightly higher standard, or if they weren't getting game time, to perhaps a bit of a lower standard. Lippy Jane, Happy New Year. Some clubs in League Two have already made half a dozen signings, says Nigel Natras. Happy New Year from AD Clark. AD, really hope we get a few signings in soon to give both the players and the fans a boost. All seems very flat. Derek Flowers going on past January transfer business. We won't make playoffs, mainly because we sign the players who are left and don't get out there early. I'm unsure if the board are too bothered, says Norfolk Pie, whether we go up this season or not. I referenced the Richard Montague interview last week. One point, and you've mentioned this before, Stell. You know, we're all very adept at playing with other people's money. But one point that I'll not challenge you is the wrong word, but debate. When you said Chesterfield, bigger budget, almost certainly got a bigger budget, be even bigger now, and not can't or won't compete with that. But should not be competing with that, given we are competing against Chesterfield for an automatic and a playoff berth. And I take on board your point that crowd does not directly, as it used to, automatically dictate as to where a club plays in the league. Bournemouth are on the same crowd as Notts are in the Premier League. But nevertheless, you know, a big crowds, you know, I think that I do detect among some elements of the fan base, you know, there's 10,000 coming down week after week. And it's sometimes a hard swallow, if you like, to accept that we can't have a budget in this division that's better than somewhere, in Richard Montague's own paraphrasing, between 6th and 8th, 6th and 9th.
Yeah, so should we be competing with Chesterfield? I certainly hope we are competing with Chesterfield, and I don't think we'll be a million miles away. I just think with the money that they've spent over recent years, they've got a decent size. But again, I don't know the order of the pecking order of
No.
the salary caps. But again, it comes down to what the ownership of every club is willing to write off as losses.
Yeah.
So that'll dictate your budget. Should we be competing with them? Absolutely. Are we competing with them? Absolutely. Even though they beat us Boxing Day, we're there or thereabouts. They're a point above us, aren't they? As we sit
Yeah.
in the minute, just inside the playoffs. So you could argue that they're not overperforming their budget at the minute. I would say we're not either, with where we are in 8th.
Right.
But I do get, and I absolutely agree with whoever, and I didn't catch the name of whoever it made the point you read out a couple of minutes ago, that what I would hope Notts are being careful of, the ownership and the business side of things, is that should we start to stagnate in League Two, you know, then them crowds could well drop off. You know, the 10,000. I was looking. Can we get 10,000 average? I think for League Two, that's fantastic, obviously, but that's our target. I mean, since we've come up from the National League, remember, like I say, and I'm going back a million years. When I played, we were averaging about 7,000 in what is League One now.
Yeah.
So the phenomenal crowds now that the club's done really well to attract a new fan base or new fans in. But as people say, if they don't see progress or they don't get the impression of chasing a bit of success, and I for one, I think there is that ambition there, but I do think at times you have to go against your business sense, common sense at times, to do something that really shows that, whether it's a sort of not saying a marquee signing, but a signing that excites people, intent, show that intent. All the talk in the world is good. Of course, it is. Information is great. Don't create a vacuum. But again, I've spoken about why they can't talk about potential transfers. But hopefully, you know, who knows? Football happens very quickly, particularly in transfer window. Hopefully, in a week's time, we're sat here with a different perspective, and we could be. The league table won't say much different because, again, we're sceptical as to whether we're going to have a game this weekend. But
Yeah.
you know, in terms of the position of the football club, I don't think for one second they would ever take for granted the fans. Absolutely not. But they have just got to be careful that fans always want to see something. They want to see, obviously, improved performances and winning on the pitch. And sometimes you have that, and sometimes you don't. Now, unfortunately, in the last, 2 or 3 weeks, the results have just dropped off a little bit. You know, performances have, we've had a couple of notably poor performances, and things have just dropped off a little bit. So again, people are just feeling a little bit of the downer side of things. Whereas 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were all more positive after that. You know, the start of the month, beating MK, beating Grimsby, even drawing with Walsall. It was a decent performance, and we're all feeling fine at that point. So, you know, your emotions can change very quickly in football. That's where the business side of the club have got to keep a level head and stick to the plan, if you like. But absolutely, take your point, and like I say, should we be competing with Chesterfield? Absolutely. Are we? I think we are. You know, I would imagine they've got a slightly higher wage bill than ours, but I don't know that for certain. Do I think we've got a better fan base? Absolutely. But you know, all that said, none of it guarantees success, and the fact that you know we're not marking ourselves against Chesterfield. We're marking ourselves, as you say, about them top three automatic places. Now, who would have had Bromley sitting top at this point in time of the season? Not many people, if any. So there's a long way to go. But January is a time for the club to go on, have a good January, and we could still get them top three places. Absolutely. So we'll watch this space is the way. Don't don't fall out of love with it just yet. Let's wait till the club do their business, and as ever, as every transfer window, we'll analyze the business that they do after it's been done, not what may or may not be done.
Yeah, I think speaking as a fan hat on, when I look around the region, and obviously I'm older than a lot of Notts fans, I sometimes find it difficult when I look at Peterborough, Lincoln, Burton, Mansfield, all the clubs in the, if you want to call it an East Midlands region, who historically would be levels below Notts, are actually above Notts. And so I just struggle sometimes with the way the club, if you like, present the finances. We all agree football clubs are basket cases. Yes, they should be run far more financially responsibly, but they ain't. I think you and I and most people would agree you ain't getting a salary cap in any time soon. So the correlation with most of these things is you have to spend money. And in most cases, you spend money that belongs to the owner that he is prepared to prop up football clubs. And if you've got a clutch of clubs in our region, Lincoln, Peterborough, Burton, all playing Mansfield, all playing a division higher, and being prepared clearly to put up more losses, I think it's a difficult challenge for the brothers who I think came in, and you picked up on this when we did an interview with them. They were kind of saying we need to get to League One to look to balance the books. We accept it's going to cost us money because we did this interview a few years ago in the National League, but wages have raced away in League One now. But I don't think you can't really complain too much about it, because the clubs will never get together as a group, will they? And also, right, tell you what, we won't have a salary cap, but we'll all agree that we'll actually only pay this. That'll never happen. So it concerns me a bit that with our huge fan base for a League Two club, I'm not sure how long you can keep going saying, well, we're going to try and run this as responsibly as we can, lose a bit less than everyone else. And in Richard Montague's own words, we have to do things slightly differently. Yet we are the biggest supporter club in League Two. I think somewhere the brothers are going to have to address this, because I don't think you can keep carrying on doing this the way we're doing it. If I'm honest.
And I agree. I do agree with a lot of that, because it's the perception of it, isn't it? As you've alluded to there, with your fan hat on, and all of us as fans, we look at it and go, yes, we want to spend somebody else's money, but we want to be seen to be having a real good go at it. And for all the money they've spent on infrastructure stuff, the nest, the pitch and all that sort of thing, ironic after a cancellation, I did see somebody put out a thing about it. The undersoil heating needs connecting up, otherwise,
Oh, no.
But again, that cost. I mean, we're talking about things that they've spent millions of pounds on the infrastructure of the club to make it sustainable in the longer term. But football fans don't look at football in the long term, do we? We don't look at things like what's going to benefit us in 5 years' time. We want it all now, and that's the bit. And I go, yeah. What you can't do is keep going. Look, we're building for long term, because at some point you need that success. Now they've had success. They got us out the National League. That took us 4 years. Let's not forget that. Yes, we were at the top. Yes, we were nearly there. We nearly did it a couple of times, but we actually got out the fourth attempt. Now, again, do I think they've got ambition to get out of this division? Absolutely. There is absolutely no benefit to them staying in League Two, because, the financial benefits to go up, yes, it costs more in salary and things like that, but the financial benefits are there for you. The club as an asset, if they ever needed to sell it, would be worth more. So there is no business sense in wanting to, or not wanting promotion. Like I say, it's just their own way of doing things, their own, I say constraints, but their own business process of trying to be sustainable, losing, I don't know, as little as possible, but 1.5 million at the minute, or whatever it is a year.
Yeah.
That is their sustainable. They're not going to go, do you know what? Let's lose 2.5 million this year and have a real good go at promotion. But fans, we want that, don't we? We can always go, but if we just spend another 500,000, if we just up the wage bill, if we just bought 2 or 3 players, it's almost like it's guaranteed to buy us success. And again, there's plenty of recent shows. MK Dons have spent God knows how much, and they're still sat in League Two with us. Carlisle spent God knows how much, and they're down in the National League. So it is that fantasy football thing that I always talk about, that it's so easy to talk about it. We would all get promoted, wouldn't we? All of us that don't have to pick a team, don't have to sign any players, we would all get promoted. Don't have to put any money in either, but it's down to them to do it. And I hope they do it the right way. Hope they have a great January. I hope they just sign a couple of diamonds, a couple of absolute gems that come in and are the difference between another season in League Two or starting next season in League One, because it's absolutely there for us. It really is, just like it is for about a dozen other teams, and maybe even more. They'll all be having that same conversation. All these fan, what are these called, podcasts that clubs do, all different clubs, and there's 3 or 4 or 5 not swans, aren't there? We'll all be having this conversation. Oh, if only we could just spend more, we could just bring this player in, then we could do it. There'd be, 15 clubs podcasts saying exactly the same thing. only 4 of them can get promoted. Only 4 of them can be successful. So we hope that the Reach Brothers' way of doing things and the club's way of doing things ultimately is proven successful.
Speculate to accumulate, says Tim Watchorn. Time for action. What price, says Andy Eason, we bring in someone from outside of these shores? I would have thought Martin would have wanted any new faces in for a full week's training. Bale and Ball, to be fair to the club, illness over the last month or so has not helped our predicament. Ian Cooksey, goal scorers are goal scorers, he says. They can and do it anywhere. The bloke on the screen next to you, Paul, is proof of that. Come back, Lee Curtis, says Andy Eason. He's on the Derby parade now. He's on the Derby parade. Knots, Fredo, Happy New Year, Paul and Stel. We need to sign players quickly if we have any chance of going up this season. This squad is a mid-table team. We are overachieving. Braybook going to Chesterfield on loan has sparked a bit of debate among the message board's posters. Ian Cooksey, as Stel said on New Year's Day, plenty of grit, but very little real quality. Norfolk Pie, I admire Stell's optimism, obviously a true Notts fan. Wayne Wilkins, not sure if he's in Barcelona or England at the moment. He's in London. Just walking by the River Thames, wishing for a new signing to warm up the cockles, and concerned by anything currently, just that we need, not too concerned by anything currently, we just need a spruce of life with a signing. People asking about Jaden Luca. I think anything to do with Jaden is going to be dependent on his recovery from that injury and surgery that he had. Ian Cooksey, Walsall have lost 3 of their loanees today. Canu, I think he's the one from Charlton that looked quite dangerous, isn't one of them yet. James Cannon, a replacement, not sure if it's a replacement or an add-on for Jatta, desperately needed, and a new keeper. A few others for good measure. James is looking for. There's some rumour doing the rounds about Ollie Norburn and Shrewsbury, but it is pure, as far as I can ascertain, Facebook speculation. Smaller budget than Chesterfield, says Killer Line. There's something wrong there. Colin Metcalf is about the same age as me still, so we still live in 1981 when we used to beat Forest 18 months after they won the European Cup. Colin Metcalf, one concern I have is injuries. We have now got a few players who will play half a season at most. This, in my opinion, needs taking into consideration with signings. I agree. I think I made that point a little bit earlier. Greza Maxwell, we have a crowd on a par with Bournemouth in the Prem. Our ground is twice as big. However, Bournemouth have billionaire owners who don't mind losing 30 million per season. Yeah, and I agree with everything you've said, Greza, but this is the challenge that all owners face now, isn't it? I think it's difficult to be an owner if you're not prepared to write off or put in substantial sums of money. SE Kent, Bromley was celebrating their highest attendance of the season on their last game, 4,954. Unsure about the ambition, says Stephen Geldard. James Cannon again. Are not only continue to play Jatta to keep him in the shop window for January. Well, if he weren't playing, we'd all some people would be saying we're making sure he don't get injured before selling him. So I think you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't on that one. Paul Arnold, I'm sure there is no one at Bromley, also saying they are worried about the hike in wages in League One. They will be rubbing their hands at going up. We always seem to treat this as a negative. Look how long it took Bradford with crowds of over 15k. Contrasts Martin Blaney. Ian Cooksey, worry about it when you get there. Stuart Jackson, should the owners be looking for a partner with money or even openly looking for new owners? We don't like to think that, but as fans, we want the best for the club. Norfolk Pie, we were saying virtually the same things this time last year. If you want a sustainable business, perhaps a football club is not the best choice of business. I have said that on many times, Norfolk Pie. Ian Cooksey, another news poll, your mate Martin O'Neill is back at Celtic until the end of the season. Tell me something I didn't know, Cookie. If there's a perceived lack of ambition this month, those 10,000 gates will start to fall, says Nigel Natras. David Dawes, we should look at how Bromley do it. I would just say look at Andy Woodman. What are Bromley doing that we are not? Again, I think it's largely Andy Woodman. Kyle Cameron, top of the league, says S.E. Ken. Not had too much game time, but he is actively involved, I believe, now. Well, there seems to be a lot of debate about Bromley. Stell, let's just change the tack a bit, because we can go on and on and on about the transfer window, and I'm sure we will for the next 27 days, depending how and when and who comes in. How much of a kick in the teeth was Accrington? How much of a surprise? I made the point on the vlog, from the moment I walked to the ground, seemed very quiet. I walked into the ground, seemed very flat, watched the warm-up, and I was reminded of Neil Ardley telling me the story before the Harrogate playoff final, when he thought everything was fine. The moment they went for the warm-up on the pitch before the Harrogate playoff, he said, I knew we had a problem. He said, I knew we had a problem. The players just didn't seem right. Is this another one-off? Did we look at a little bit jaded? We don't rotate, which a lot of people like. Could we have used more players and changed it? I know this is in hindsight, and you can never prove one way or t'other, can you? But what do you put the Accrington performance result down to? Because it was pretty bad.
Oh yeah. I don't think anybody who saw it would deny it was anything other than bad. Martin wouldn't, none of the coaching staff, the players wouldn't, and certainly anybody who's in attendance, over 10,000 Notts fans as well. What do I put it down to? I put it down to the fact in League Two, you can have players that are good one week, good one game, and not good the next, and we can all look for I mentioned on the radio, he just felt a flat atmosphere in the game, and the game didn't start well, so that never gave the fans a lift. At the start of the second half, the fans tried to give the players a lift, as they have done before, and it never really got much of a reaction. But I think sometimes we, like I said, with hindsight, we can then try and poor performance. What's caused that? Lack of rotation, or the atmosphere, or this, or whatever. And you can start making the sort of answer fit your argument, if you like. But for me, sometimes it is just League Two players, League Two teams sometimes play like non-league outfits, and sometimes they'll play like League One outfits. That is the inconsistency that I'm talking about. They are not robots at League Two level. Whereas you see your Premier League players, you know what you're going to get from them most weeks. But League Two level, you don't. And all League Two clubs, and I'm sure, again, fans up and down League Two will say, yeah, our club had a performance like that. Yeah, our club have had a performance like that against so-and-so. That's why from an early part of this season, the league table said, I don't know how many games it was, but it was after 15 games, everybody in the division had lost at least 4, I think. Which it shows no consistency, no rhyme or reason, no, absolutely, as people say, it's a wide open division. We've seen everybody now with the Accrington game, and I've not seen a team that I thought, you know what, they're going to storm it. So again, it's that magic word of consistency. The team that can find it, and Bromley have got it at the minute, haven't they? I think they've won 5 on the spin. They're top of the table because of it. But that could change by the end of the month. That could be totally different. There could be another team sitting top. So I don't like to get too clever. If it's, say, one-off, it's not the first performance, but if it's in the minority performances like we had against Accrington, then I go, well, look, that can just be put down to the inconsistency of League Two football and footballers. If it becomes a bit more frequent than that, then you have to look, and then there maybe is something that underlying. But you could argue at the back end of the Christmas period, were the players jaded? But possibly, but only the players would know. But they put in a hell of a performance at MK Dons. They didn't look jaded 3 or 4 nights before that, and it wasn't like there's only a day's rest in between the games. So look, I don't think so. I think Accrington made 2 changes from their previous game as well, but they didn't look jaded. So again, I think you can sometimes try and find a sort of deeper solution than the answer, which is quite dull, than saying League Two players will occasionally throw in a bad performance.
Okay, let's get some more thoughts. Norfolk Pie fans, put money into the club. It is not cheap to go and watch games regularly. James Cannon, we missed our chance last season with Crowley, Didsey, Abbott, Bass and a fit Jody. With Pato in charge last season, we would have been in Division 1 now. AD Clark, the club model is to find players, improve and sell them on. Most signings are a gamble, either experienced players with high risk of injury or young talent with a chance of them making it. And it's a good point you raise, and I've little to disprove the theory, AD. But you've mentioned the club model: find players, improve, sell them on. Nowhere in that statement says get promotion. And I think sometimes, although, as Richard Montague pointed out, the main objective is promotion, but when the caveats come in about improving players, this and that, I just think the club have to be very careful about, in some ways, alienating sections of the fan base who, like me, as a fan, results. We can make players worse for all I care. We can never sell a player for 50 quid again in our lives. If we're in League One, I'm a lot happier than if we're flogging players for $750,000 in League Two. My view would be you sign players to give you the best chance of promotion. Not worried about resale value. Dale Pikett, Owen Goodman. We're all playing Football Manager here. He's not getting game time at Huddersfield. And Palace want him to get more game time. Killer Klein. I'm pragmatic, understand the need to be sensible with finances, but I'm finding our slow start to the January window very concerning. I hope it is not a repeat of last January. Who thinks we should sign the pantomime villain? Paul Mullen says Chef Dave TikTok. He scored, didn't he? Penalty against us. Wigan. Was that League Cup start of the season still?
Yeah. That was in the League Cup, the only goal of the game, wasn't it? Yeah.
That's right. Zedo, we've had a poor midfield since injuries and got found out as the month went on. Ian Cooksey tells me that one of Martin's assistants at Celtic, Notts player, Mark Fotheringham. Yes, yeah. Stel, just a slightly more sort of debating topic, if you like. We've seen Ruben Amorim go today at Manchester United. That sparks quite a bit of debate about, did they back him enough? Did they back him too much? What about behind the scenes, the directors of football, this, that, and the other? And I've often said to you, all managers seem to go mad at some point because of the pressure cooker that they're, be it League Two, Premier League, whatever. I know they get shed loads, right? But I do find it quite interesting that, Enzo Maresco kind of blew a gasket at Chelsea. Amorim blows a gasket at Man U, and they've both gone. Or are they doing that in a way just to engineer things? I find, because for me, this model of all the good managers I've ever met, they're all power crazed and they're all autocrats. They all want to run everything because that's kind of in their nature. We're in a transitional period, I think, in English football, all the way down to, I tell you what, Reneth Miners Welfare. This is not being disrespectful. Have recently appointed, I think it's Liam Hearn, a director of football operations. Now, I don't know whether that means he's the manager as well. I suspect it doesn't. But we kind of have these more and more layers within football clubs, don't we? And I think abroad, that model has matured, and 90% of European head coaches are fine with the designation. they're fine with the players. You give me the players, I'll do me bits and pieces. I still think in England there is quite a dogged resistance to having too many layers in a football department. Discuss.
Yeah, how long you got?
I think it's an
And look,
interesting debate, though. I think it's an interesting debate.
yeah, and I think yeah, fashions, trends affect things, don't they? And the football is a far more lucrative game than it ever has been, isn't it? You know, it's gone through the generations. I think almost the days of an Alex Ferguson or somebody sort of, as you say, autocratically running the football side of things completely under one person. You've got the owner up there, but he's just a facilitator to sign the checks for the manager. Them days have gone, and I don't see them ever coming back. What you have got is, I mean, you're talking at the very top levels, the difficulty of trying to get to talk to a player, because they'll not just have one agent, they'll have a company of agents and God knows what else before you actually you can't even get to speak to the actual player. So you have to delegate, and you have to, like I say, they're global businesses at the top end in the Premier League and around Europe. They're global businesses where you wouldn't just have one person generally running things. You need somebody else to run different aspects of it. So I think that model's been in for a while, hasn't it? Come from abroad generally, but been in for a while. And like anything, it filters down, doesn't it? And then becomes a thing. We've got the technical board at knots. At the minute, we've had sort of iterations of that previously, haven't we? With Guy Branston and uh, Eileen and Ray, when we had it was at the transfer panel or something like that, and we ended up Ricardo Moniz, and we ended up with a sort of half continental, half
Yeah.
English squad, if you like, and yeah, that didn't work too well. The main bit for me is everybody you talk about has an ego. Everybody who gets to them position, like it or not, have got an ego. We've all got egos,
Mm.
but generally, the further up the tree you climb, the bigger that ego is, and it has to deal with other egos. And there's inevitably going to be clashes along the way, because football is one of them industries that, it's very focused on the here and now. As we've been saying here, listening, talking with a fan's perspective, we all want success today, don't we? We want it now. We don't want to wait for 2 seasons or a season. We want it now. Within that club, within that pressure cooker, everybody who's in a role knows the pressure that's on them to get success now. And that can create, when it's not going well, and say you very rarely see these fallouts when things are going swimmingly. You know, egos all get on nicely. The director of football is great because he's signing the right players. The head of coaching, manager, whatever, he's great because he's getting results on the pitch. Everything's great. Everything's rosy. The minute it's not going wrong, then everything comes into question. And then there can be a little bit of, you say manufacturing situations, managers do and people do, but then it's about, a lot of it can be about self-preservation, carefully worded, cryptic interviews from a head coach or a manager or things like that. Just giving enough, but not actually saying anything verbatim. That can lead you to issues. I think Amarin gave a statement like that, didn't he, after the game the other night? And hey, presto, he's gone 2 days
But
later.
it appeared still that the straw that broke the camel's back, or what everyone picked up on, and then subsequently led to his removal, was his impassioned stance. I am the manager. I am not a head coach. I come here to manage, and I just think that's the real heart of all of it. To be fair to the brothers, it's quite unusual for the director of football to be sacked. Sorry, part company, yeah, which was what happened, parting company, with Roberto Gagliardi. I can think of probably one other this season where the director of football, I think at Newcastle, left, and I think it was no secret, wasn't eye to eye with Eddie Howe, who'd clearly done very well and got them into the Champions League. So, because sometimes I do think those positions lack accountability. It's
That
crap results. The manager gets the oof. To be fair to the brothers, yes, they appointed Roberto, but they parted company with him very quickly, and there was no other action taken against the head coach or the manager. Nor should there have been, but there wasn't. It was just that particular role.
Yeah, and I think that's a good word. The accountability. If you're going to have these multiple heads of department, if you like, head coach, head of recruitment, head of whatever whatever the titles are going to be, you want clear roles and responsibilities. So then you've got accountability. Hold on a minute. We don't think the transfer window is up to scratch. We don't think that the salaries that we're paying for the players that have been brought in equate to value as we want. We want this value that we're after. Then you've got accountability. It falls on the head of recruitment. If you think that you know what, we've got some real good players here, we've got real good talent, and we think we've got them at a good value, and then results on the pitch have you in the bottom half, then what's the coach doing? What's the manager doing? What's happening? Have we got any injuries? Are there any? Is that But again, accountability is the big thing. All about it. Let's face it. The accountability always fell on the manager back in Ferguson's day, wasn't it? He was very nearly sacked at 3-4 years in. As the story goes, and then the rest is history. So look, it's different nowadays. It probably won't ever go back. I don't see a time when it goes back. It's such a big business, and it's almost impossible for one person to deal with every aspect or be in charge of every aspect of a football club. They can certainly have the final say, but you need minions for whatever terminology you want them to have, whatever job title you want them to have. You need people you can't have a manager that's coaching all day, doing all the coaching, and then going and sitting with agents and thrashing deals out for players when you may be speaking to 10 different players, and also going and doing the scouting and doing things. It's just never going to happen. There isn't enough hours in the day for it. So I think the game has changed, but again, it's just how you get, like I say about a team, get them jigsaw pieces of a technical board to fit together, clear roles and responsibilities, and clear accountability. And just to go back to Amorim, he was half right, wasn't he, when he said he's a manager? He's an out-to-work manager.
Hey, is that a good payoff? Gaza Lee, it's not a one-off, Accrington. Remember Harrogate, Brackley, Barrow, Newport, Crewe, Chesterfield, Colchester. We can roll back to last season for poor performances. Pato has taken this group of players to its limits. Ian Cooksey, how many players have we sold under the brothers' ownership? I can think about 6, but not many more. Langstaff, Crowley, Kel Roberts, Bass, Naman, Kedwin, Gary Pearce. However inconsistent our players seem to be, let's remember they are professional footballers. No excuses. I could always go to the park on Sunday morning. Nigel Bosworth, we need to get out of League Two. If we don't put the money in this time, we will be here again. We have been poor and are not showing anything at the moment. It concerns me, says Gary Pearce, that when we are playing poorly, we replace players for like, 2 wing backs off and 2 on. We need to change the system when it's not working. Lippy Jane, whatever some of the players are very young. Some have young children and toddlers. They are exhausted. How much is the emotional well-being being looked after by the club? Everything is very, inverted commas, black and white. Lippy Jane, we are getting rid of too much talent, she adds. Bradford City were absolutely no better than us. They had some very last-minute goals. King of the last-minute goals, Lippy Jane, Wrexham. Just think back to that National League season and the League Two season as well. John Parnham has arrived, got here eventually. Some people do talk. I'll have it watched to the end and then replay it. Before we wrap up, Stell, Oldham, if it's on. Now they've had a bit of a recovery. Ironically, when they came to Meadow Lane, they had some unbelievable defensive record, didn't they? We put about 4 past them. Was it 4? Could have been about 12, couldn't it? And we're all scratching our heads thinking, how on earth did they have the best defensive record in the division at the time when we played them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were well clear, weren't they, as well? The tightest defence, and 3 we scored, 3-1 we beat them.
3-1.
Yeah, I mean, they've still got the joint best defensive record in the division now.
They
Only
are
conceded 19 goals, yeah. So look, they obviously are a mean defence, but again, for all the negativity, we look back to that. We were all positive then, weren't we? And again, not to reiterate that League Two is topsy turvy. Obviously, the Gillingham game that was going to be played at Sunday, yesterday, they were top of the table when we played them first time round, weren't we? Well, they're 16th in the
Yeah.
table now, so that's half a season difference of how things can change. So, look, things are looking a little bit negative now for us. If the game goes on against Oldham, I expect the same sort of thing. I expect us to be strong. I expect to give them a good game. They're in a decent run of form, 1-2, drawn 2 out of the last 4. So I think Mickey Mellon's got them going pretty well up there. Say they're obviously organised, hard to beat. Don't score loads of goals. That's why they're sat in mid-table, and they've never really been anywhere above mid-table,
No.
despite having that sort of tight defensive record. So again, I just think it always comes down to how you perform on the 90 minutes. You've got to play well. You've got to give all these teams credit. This is not like the National League. We've said this, we've stressed this all the while since getting promoted, that any game, if you don't turn up and don't perform, then you can get beat by anybody. And I wouldn't say that was always the case in the National League. So, but if Notts do perform, if we perform like we did at MK Dons, I'd expect us to get all 3 points. That said, I'm not expecting the game to go ahead if the forecast is anything to go by, but the players will prepare as if it is, that's for sure. So, look, it'll be a tough game, like they all are, and the other night, MK Dons in Chesterfield drew 2-2, didn't they? MK ahead 2-0 at half time, was it? And then got pegged back. Look, it's a tight division. There is not a great deal between top and, 15th, 16th, 17th in the table. And on any given day, anyone can beat anybody. But I just think Notts have got to get back to winning ways. If we get a couple of new faces in, that'd be ideal. Whether they'd start, I mean, that could be questionable. I don't know. But I'd also like to see the skipper back fit again. That's one. And I think Scott Robertson's going to be a little bit longer. But I think if the skipper's fit again, I think he just gives us a little bit more solidity, maybe just a bit more reassurance in our possession, and just makes us tick a little bit more. So hopefully he's fit if the game goes ahead. And if not, then I would imagine he's certainly going to be fit for the Crawley the following week, isn't it?
Yeah. We talk about strategic postponements. Now, we all know that there is sometimes a correlation between teams on losing runs getting home games called off and all the rest of it, and conversely, teams on winning runs, home making sure they do everything they possibly can to get the game on. In terms of trying to sort of crumbs of comfort to give us a chance of the game being on, do you think Oldham, given their recent good run and the fact we didn't do so well in our last game, do you think Oldham will be keen, if at all possible, to get this game on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the tactical postponements are a little bit overblown in terms of it's conspiracy theory type stuff. Some of it, but I agree, it does happen, absolutely, unless they've got an injury crisis that we don't know about. I'm sure they'll be doing everything they can to get the game on. They're in a decent run of form. There's no real massive advantage either way round, is there? Because it's not like we've lost 7 on the spin or anything like that. We've just had a couple of poor performances out of the last 3 games, or 4 games, should I say? But no, there's 3 games with the game cancelled. I'm all over the shop still. But Notts will have had now, what if the game does go ahead, 9 days rest, if you like, or 9 days since the last game. So any rumours of being jaded, they've gone out the window by the time the game comes round. Look, they'll be wanting to get the game on, and I think both teams will want to get the game. Notts would have wanted to play on Sunday because you don't want to stew on that Accrington performance for longer than you absolutely need to. So, okay, the fact it was called off, maybe not the worst thing in the world, gives the chance to get the likes of Matt Palmer and Scott Robertson close to fitness, maybe 1 or 2 coming in. But it's the same for all clubs, isn't it, in the window? Now the window's open. Oldham might have a chance to get 1 or 2 players in before Saturday, should they feel they need them. So we'll see, but I'm sure they're doing everything they can to get the game on.
Indeed. Right, we just come up to the hour mark. That will probably do us for this evening. Thank you, one and all, for taking part, as we imagined. Lots of messages, so we couldn't get all of them read out this evening. I'm sure we will be keeping updating, refreshing, whatever that F5 is for Twitter. As for any news of Notts incomings, hopefully there will be some before our scheduled next game against Oldham this coming Saturday. Do keep an eye out on pitch inspections and all the rest of it. I'd imagine Notts would ordinarily travel up on the Friday for that game. So I would think if you all things being equal, it wouldn't surprise me if there was a pitch inspection Friday morning. As I say, it's -8 in Oldham tonight. Oh, blimey, bloody! I think it's one of the 2 highest grounds in the country, or something like that. It's always one of those quiz questions. So, Stel, thank you as always. If it is on, you will be journeying up there. You're not jetting off to sunnier climes.
No, I maybe wish if it's going to be -8, but no, I'm going to be there. Like I say, if there is going to be, you're right, there will be a pitch inspection. I would imagine the Friday morning if it's been as cold as it's forecast to be. And again, these games. I mean, you mentioned about that Watford game, absolutely ridiculous, calling it off 15 minutes before the kickoff. Absolute. But we've spoken about this before, haven't we, in the National League? So hopefully there is an early inspection like this week, and fans can, if it's going to be called off, don't waste their money on pre-booked hotels and travel and things like that. So yeah, the earlier the better if it is going to be called off. But we'll go into it expecting it to be on with optimism. So I'm going to be there, yes, with Adam, and we'll be taking it nice and steady on the roads, as I hope everyone is.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily the end of the world in terms of a fixture backlog either. It is FA Cup third round weekend, Brackley and all that. So I think there's only scheduled to be 4 or 5 League Two games anyway. That's assuming all the others were to take place. Adam Kent is living in a pretty cold part of Newark. He said it's already -8. I don't know whether you walk in a ploughed field somewhere on top of a hill, Adam, but crikey, -8. It's only 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Oh, dear me. Anyway, yeah, Dover never again, Ian Cooksey. How many times have we been to them white cliffs of Dover? All right. Thank you very much, one and all. Thank you to our official partners, JH Accountants, Big Shed, Trent Navigation over the road. The Jim O'Brien event is now completely sold out on Thursday, February the 12th. Should be a cracking night. And we've got 1 or 2 more players from that era being lined up in March and April as well. Thank you, one and all. Look how many people's been on the show tonight. Yeah, busy show tonight. I'll be back Friday night, subject to there being a passing of a pitch inspection. Look forward to seeing you all soon. Stel, thanks again for your time and expert analysis.
Yeah, pleasure, no problem. Have a good week, everybody. Stay nice and wrapped up.
And yeah, get your thermals on. If you're in Newark, it's already -8, according to Adam Kent.